Welcome back to 52 Lockup. I am your Apple TV Cat, my bit in Apple TV. 52 Lockup is a series I started to talk about one of my biggest passions, true crime. A new episode at every Cat Maniac Monday. 52 Mondays, 52 crimes. I know I owe you an episode. I have not forgotten. You are not forgotten, my love. But I hope you guys enjoy. Be sure to like, feedback, give me something to subscribe. You know the YouTube stuff. You know this. And of course, as usual, viewer discretion is always advised. So let's go down to South America and, take a pit stop in Brazil. I mean, when you think of Brazil, you're thinking the beautiful landscape, the beautiful people, the women, the magnificent and iconic Carnival festival, the colors that come to life. You're like, wow. So unfortunately, we will not be discussing any of those wonderful things at all, because this is how we're going to picture it. Hear me out. Picture it. You are in serious need of medical attention. You have to go under anesthesia. Someone at the hospital decides, they're unconscious. They shouldn't be waking up any time. And they decide they're going to take full advantage of you because of their position at their job. Meet 32-year-old, the fuckboy mentality, Giovanni Bezerra. He would accept his degree from Centro Universitario de Volta Redonda. And by 2017-2018, he would be completing his residency in anesthesiology. Anesthesiology. I just want you to know that is not an easy job, right? Because as a side note, we're going to just step over here. As a side note, it takes a minimum of 12 years to become an anesthesiologist. Minimum 12 years. So anesthesiologists must complete a 4-year bachelor's program, 4-year medical program, and then 4 years of residency, right? And that's not it. Like, you would think that's it, but that's not it, right? So then next they have to pass a national board exam, complete a fellowship program, or at least spend 2 years in a private practice, right? Acquire certification, and then take their licensing exam. The primary role of an anesthesiologist is basically to provide continual medical assessments of a patient, as in monitoring and controlling the patient's vital life functions. That will include the heart rate, right? The rhythm of the heart, the breathing, and whether the breathing's labor, if it's non-labored, right? You were talking about blood pressure. We're talking about the body's temperature, right? How I'm feeling right now because how hot this is right now. Body fluid, whether you're sweating too much, if you're losing, too much water, they got to check all that, right? So just picture it, right? What they're doing allows patients to undergo surgery safely. So you're going in, you're like, man, I got to get hip surgery, right? An anesthesiologist will sit there and make sure that they lower the body's blood pressure, so this way it reduces bleeding during the surgery as well as after. While the patient is under anesthesia, parts of the body may not receive the proper amount of oxygen. Too little oxygen in the blood will make a patient hypoxic. So we need oxygen everywhere, right? So they need to make sure that the patient's vital signs are actually going to be stabilized during surgery, after surgery, as well as they're recovering properly. So it's a very, very important job. Okay, and this is everything that Giovanni spent his life, at least minimum 12 years, training to do. Training. And spending his life, a lot of his time. You see why I'm so mad about it in a second. However, 2018, while working at another facility, right, he runs his trouble. Remember, you got to do the fellowship program or 2 years in another clinic, right? So he runs into trouble before he can completely be qualified as an anesthesiast. So him and another doctor, they were accused and ended up being sued for this, a mixed diagnosing of a case of swine flu versus a urinary tract infection. They said the patient had a urinary tract infection. She did not. Swine flu, also known as the influenza virus H1N1, that infect the cells that line the nose, the throat, and the lungs, right? So the virus is airborne, okay? It's just for those who may not know. The contaminated droplets, they pass from person to person, right? Similar to pertussis or COVID, like everyone's favorite. And a lot of it is because in our atmosphere, 78% of it is actually in nitrogen, 21% is oxygen, and then the rest is water. Did you know that humans actually inhale 6% of the 4% of the beautiful molecules that are actually out there in the air? Wonderful. It's probably one of the reasons why masks actually work. Throwing it in there. Theories. So symptoms include fever, cough, sore throat, chills, body aches. Sounds a little familiar, right? It gains its name swine flu actually because of the genetic similarities of the flu that does affect pigs, but it doesn't come from pigs. It's not like it was contracted the same way humans got syphilis. But urinary tract infection is an infection that will affect the urinary system, right? We're talking about all this down here, right? We're looking at the kidneys, the uterus, the bladder, the urethra. That's where we're looking at. Usually it's caused by bacteria, like from poo entering the urinary tract, right? So when urinary tract infection is left untreated, the infection can spread from like the bladder to one or both kidneys, leading to kidney failure. We need that to filter things, right? Filter things out. Symptoms of a bladder infection can also include dysuria, which is painful burning sensation while urinating. This means painful. Urea is obviously urine. There's also polyuria, right? Poly means many, urea means urine, so frequently peeing. Feeling the need to urinate despite having you empty out your bladder. You know, you're just sitting there like, no, I did it. Hematuria, blood in the urine, pressure on the abdomen. It is, if it's on the kidney, you see extra symptoms that are like fever, right? Chills, lower back pain, nausea, as well as vomiting. Swine flu, much like other popular respiratory viruses, can lead to serious problems like pneumonia. Yeah, lungs are filling up. Yeah, lung infection and other breathing problems. We need oxygen. I mean, and other gases to breathe. We need it to be balanced, but like, we need it. So I'm not really sure how they mixed up those two very different things, swine flu versus urinary tract infection, and then mixed that up. Now, is it possible that they made a mistake? Yeah, I mean, it's possible. But their mistake would actually result in the patient falling into a coma for 23 days. Very similar to another case, swine flu, where an actually very healthy man, healthy fitness advocate, Brad Kettle, would actually be another person who would actually fall into a coma because of swine flu. Okay, so while this malpractice lawsuit is going on, Giovanni now obtains his official qualification to operate as an anesthesiologist at Hospital da Mujer Elonida. Estoral en Villada dos Teles. Maybe the diagnosis again was a mishap. However, it's also possible he was not listening to his patient, because often women, it is known for women to complain about when they go talk to the doctor, they're like, so you feel sick. You sure it's not your weight? But anyways, July 2022, right? Other hospital staff members are becoming a little suspicious of Giovanni. They're like, okay, what's with this guy? What's with this fool? Right? They're like, what is wrong with him? They notice little small things. They're like, oh, he seems a little aroused during medical procedures, which is giving somnophilia vibes, right? A somnophiliac is actually a person who has a desire to have sex with someone who is unconscious, sleeping, or in a comatose state, meaning that they cannot respond, they cannot reciprocate. This is a sexual paraphilia that apparently is rarely reported, and I presume it's probably because it's like necrophilia, except it's necrophiliac without the death. Just buy a fucking doll. So Giovanni began to act suspicious, right? And they're like, something's up with this dude. So this particular day, he's got 5 patients that are lined up for C-section, right? It's also known as cesarean section or cesarean delivery. This is a surgical procedure by which one or more babies are delivered through an incision in the mother's abdomen, often performed because vaginal delivery would put the pregnant person at risk. They stay in the news as of lately, right? Apparently, Giovanni was like, she's unconscious. She can't do anything. I'm going to assault her. That's what I'm going to do. So he decides this is the best time to stick his dick in her mouth while she's unconscious. Apparently, this would happen to two different patients on the same day. After he is done, he gets gauze to clean up his mess, but he doesn't know he's being secretly recorded by the staff, because you can only imagine their surprise, right? So picture this, right? Allegedly, Giovanni had 2 more medical procedures set up, and the staff is like, some shit is up. Something is wrong, right? So they're exhausted. They're trying to get into the room. And they're like, how do we get the cameras in there? And then suddenly, they had to swap staff, and they were like, while we change shifts, we can put the camera in there, right? Because their concern is the patient is injured. What happened? What are you doing? So while they're swapping staffs and they're like, oh yeah, okay, oh my God, see you later. Night shift, good night. Everyone's like leaving. They swap, they set up the camera. Now he is 1 meter away from his colleague. You can actually see him in the background while he continues to torture a patient for about 10 minutes. Even a nurse had to walk towards him like, hey, Giovanni, what the fuck are you doing? He gets super aggressive from behind the sheet. And he's just like being aggressive, screaming at her. Because he obviously doesn't want to get caught literally with his dick in someone else's mouth, right? And as the investigation is being taken place, now they're discovering that there were 5 additional women as of right now so far, that are now coming forward, because one of them told the press that she thought she was hallucinating. She was just like, that was a weird ass dream I had. Because that would never happen. Because I'm going to a hospital to get birth. Instead of realizing, oh yeah, it's a crazy dream I had from the drugs, she would learn later that it was actually a reality. So Giovanni, he's living his best life. And he ends up getting arrested. He's surprised. They send him to Bangu. Let me explain to you what Bangu It is West Rio de Janeiro, right? It is a maximum security prison that holds 17 units. Pat Hickey and Kevin Mullen are being held in Bangu. This prison has a severely deadly reputation. Under the control of the gang Comanda Vermelha, the most feared criminals, murderers, drug traffickers, gang members, they're all here, right? Even drug lord Fernandinho Vera Mar. The outside of this prison was marked as saying to smell like sewage and a blend of like whiffs of deep fried tidbits, according to an article on Bloomberg, right? At this, in 2004, the prison had a riot, 30 inmates dead, right? So in fact, you couldn't tell me that this is not the place that Bane didn't come from. I mean, I'm pretty sure Bane sat there waiting there for Batman before he broke his back. Like, I'm dead set on this, right? So the prisoners are rowdy. They heard about what he did. They're like, oh, yo, Giovanni, we're fucking waiting for you. So when he arrives, like the little bitch that he is, the judge is like, we're going to sentence you to indefinite detention and solitary confinement while we do this investigation. Because the inmates were looking to tear that ass up, right? They were looking for him, right? And something just giving me this weird impression. Like, it's giving me, he probably wouldn't want to be violated sexually, whether he was conscious or unconscious, but it could just be a theory of mine. And I know some of you may be like, fuck, leave him to the prisoners. And I know you're like, no, leave him to the prisoners. But here's the thing. People who experience solitary confinement are more likely to develop anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, and psychosis. The practice actually also affects you not only mentally, but as well as your physical health. And this can include a person's conditions being like getting a fracture, vision loss, and chronic pain. 15 days locked up in solitary confinement is enough to cause permanent psychological damage. And we're talking from basic things of anxiety to paranoia to even the inability to form coherent thoughts. The effects are obviously worse with inmates who go into solitary confinement who already have mental illness, right? So either way, he's fucked. Giovanni's crimes, obviously if convicted, will carry a prison sentence to 8 to 15 years. Now, I'm not sure if that is in total for all of the women or if that'll be per woman. I'm not really sure. But here's the thing. Giovanni, here's what I'm not understanding. You spend 12 years minimum, working your ass off to get good grades, to get the license, to do this, to do that, to finally get there, and you decide, I'm gonna put my dick in here. Like, that's the best thought you came up with? Really? I'm sorry, it's too hot. How do you waste your time? You're in a facility where people go there to trust you. They trust you to take care of them. I'm not just talking about women who need a C-section at that particular moment. People go under the knife. People need anesthesia for a lot of other things. Your job is so vital and so important, and this is what you choose to do. Are you fucking kidding me? It's so aggravating, and it's already hard for patients to trust hospitals, to trust the medical staff, to trust their doctors, and there's so much like shady stuff, especially when you look at the medical history on like how we learn things, like Nazis, what they did in Puerto Rico, with the birth control, black people, there's a lot. So it's hard for people to trust you, and then you just go out and you're like, how could I make this worse for people? Like, how could I? Oh, I know what I can do. And then here's my thing, the somnophilia. I'm not comprehending it, right? Because I picture when you are engaging in sex, you would want the other person to at least acknowledge you in bed. At least that's what I'm picturing, right? Because necrophilia is another level, but like I'm just not understanding like if that's your thing, and you're obviously as a anesthesiologist, they make damn good money. Being an anesthesiologist assistant, you make about I think it's like 150, 200K. So that's half, because they do half the amount of time. And anesthesiologists, they're fucking making bank, right? So if you're making that much money, you couldn't just hire a hooker, like, hey, so if you could just lay there and not react to me, that was kind of a kink of mine. You know what I mean? Like that's essentially what they're doing for a living. So like, if you find a sex worker, she'd be like, all right, cool, is that what you want? She would have done it. You know what I mean? Like, because you're paying her for it, because you have the money. Like, or you could have bought the most expensive sex doll. I mean, they're getting more and more and more realistic. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's a robotic one that we probably don't even know about that you probably could have afforded, and they would have just given it to you because of your position. They'd be like, oh, that's what I've always wanted. You know, robotic girl 9,000, whatever the hell it is that you're looking for. But yet you choose to go into the industry where you're there to help people. That's the industry you chose to go into. And that's what you choose to do. Boy, I don't know what's worse. You being in solitary confinement or letting those prisoners tear your ass up. I mean, because prisoners in prison, they have their own levels of like inferno. You, my good sir, because of what you did, you're at the bottom. Not really fond of rapists and child molesters. You're just kind of at the bottom. And you fall into that category. I cannot picture working that hard, racking up that amount of debt to learn something, and then be like, I'm going to do something super illegal. That's the thing to do. Like, get the fuck out of my face. Like, are you kidding me? This is what you choose to do? And it speaks volumes because it makes me wonder, how did you get to this point? Like, when did you go into the medical field to do that specifically because you thought you wouldn't be caught? Did you do it because the idea came across to you and you were like, she's unconscious, what could I get away with? I mean, this is just as disgusting as I forgot the doctor's name, but the doctor who has like a fucking million kids because he was like implanting them, and these are families again trusting the medical field, going, hey, I want to have a baby. Me and my husband are having trouble. So, like, if you could just, like, put his seed inside of mine, that'd be, like, super great. And then he doesn't even do it. He just puts his seed. And now there's, like, 80 kids. They're all, like, on Ancestry.com or, like, 32andMe or whatever. And they're like, oh, so you're my half-sister. Okay. Awkward. Why is it 120 of us? This is absolutely disgusting. And the reason why it's so disgusting is because people are in their most vulnerable state. They are there because they are trusting you. Whether you're looking at someone who's a nurse, whether you're looking at the doctor, an anesthesiologist, if it's a technician, someone who works in radiology and EMT, you are trusting these people. So for him, he's ruined the reputation of not just that hospital, but like other people in his position, because they're going to be like, I don't know if they're going to be like Giovanni. And that's what makes it worse, because it's people who are choosing to place themselves in a vulnerable position because they trust you, because of the position you're in. And I feel like for him to get the audacity to do it, I feel like he's got to have low-key shit in his past. There's no way, like, there has to be some girl at a party. He was like, she's unconscious and drunk. I gave her a lot of... Like, that's the impression I get from it. And again, that all goes back to toxic masculinity, where that is a-okay to do, right? It's okay to do that to a woman because it doesn't matter. I would just probably take all the wives whose husbands who he did that to their wives. I would just leave them alone with the husbands first, and then put them in solitary confinement and just like just see what happens. You know, don't kill him. Don't. He's got a case to do. But like, still, it's maddening to know that there are people who have these positions, these very sensitive positions of power, and then they choose to take advantage of it and take advantage of another person. I'm so glad that the staff took the time to like, something's not up. Does anyone notice that he's a little hard when the girls are unconscious? There's no way in the world that that's the first girl. There's no way. There's no way that it's just a couple of patients. This had to have started beforehand. He had to have been this way beforehand. And the question is, why? Is this because you have a rough upbringing with your parents? Is because I couldn't find much about it, about his upbringing, which I wanted to find out, because I wanted to know, do you have a rough relationship with your mom? Do you hate women? Well, because a lot of toxic men do. I know they're like, oh my God, no, I don't hate women. It's just that y'all are like this. You do. You guys like our anatomy, like the orifice, but you don't like us as like human beings. In fact, you don't even see us as human beings. And it makes me wonder, like, was there a rough history in regards to his father? Was the father not around? Like, where did you make this connection to think that was okay, and then decide that the best course of action to accomplish what you're looking to do is to go into medicine to do it. My heart goes out to those women, and their families and their husbands. I mean, as a husband, you definitely got to be feeling out of place because you think you left your wife or your significant other who's about to give birth to your kid, and you're leaving them in the care of someone else going, they're safe. And I can't even imagine for those partners what that would be like to know that, in a sense, because often there's a lot of pressure on men to obviously protect their significant other, and you're going to want to protect your significant other, and to know that you left them in bad hands and then something horrible happened, you're just like, that's a whole other different level. Like, this affects people on a very deep way. That means that anytime she takes her kids to the doctors, they go to the doctor, people are going to perceive medical and medicine extremely different. And we already have enough arguments about the vaccinations and all this other stuff, where people are like, well, what about this? You know, I had someone even argue like, well, the vaccination actually gives you the shingles. It doesn't actually. The virus that's actually called the chicken pox, it stays in your system. Your body actually pushes it into your nerves, and then like something can trigger it. It could be it could have been the vaccine, could happen, but you could also get it from extreme amounts of stress. Whatever occurs, your body's like, release it. Like that's what happens. But it's not necessarily the vaccine giving it to you. Vaccines are actually supposed to be to trigger your immune system to let it know, like, hey, I don't think Bob belongs here. He looks a little weird. Kick him out. But it's sad and it's deafening to know that now this other lady, right, she thought she was having this horrible nightmare. She thought she was hallucinating, and she wasn't hallucinating. She was genuinely having a memory. I mean, the body keeps score, right? So it's sad to know that these things happen to these women, and I doubt that they are the only ones. I doubt that Giovanni is the only one. The question is, how do we stop these kind of protocols? Like, do we insert cameras? Do we insert more cameras? Do we do this? Like, what are going to be the new steps that they're going to do to prevent something like this from happening ever again at that hospital and other hospitals just across the world? As well as that other doctor who was, like, trying to, like, give his sperm to, like, everyone. And then, you know, it's really sad because a lot of those kids have, like, other health issues because of their genetics, because of him. So instead of being healthy, a lot of them have, like, a lot of health issues that he just passed on. And as a doctor, fucking know better. But anyways, that's my case for today. So yeah, that is the case I decided to cover for this week, because it broke my heart to sit there and watch and like read this, and even just seeing the video alone, where you can see him like holding and he's like moving himself very slowly. I also kind of wondered how small he probably was, and that's probably what his fucking problem was. Anyways, but I digress. Whoop!